Hello, welcome to another edition of Inside the Birds, a special edition where we're talking about evaluation and valuation, most importantly, of contracts as we are on the doorstep of the NFL new league year and free agency. So we bring in our analytics reporter slash expert, Sam Finkel, who has been helping us break down with his predictive models what we can expect Eagles in-house free agents to be making either on the open market or as re-signings to the Philadelphia Eagles, who are trying to repeat as Super Bowl champs. So in our last episode, Sam, pretty, like I said, I think Eagles fans pretty happy with what the results are, which is the arrow kind of pointing to Zach Bond not blowing up the market, being reasonable, coming back, whereas Mekhi Becton not blowing up the market either, but probably in that range where the Eagles might say, listen, we draft and develop at this. Go, thank you for everything. Go ahead. This set of players we're about to talk to, MiltonWilliams and JoshSweat, it's going to be a little bit interesting because this is like the bread and butter of what the Eagles do, rushing the passer.
Absolutely.
How did you, I always like you to give a little context. MiltonWilliams and JoshSweat are both guys with a little bit more of a resume, right, than what we talked about with Becton and Bond, who are, quote, one-year wonders. But one's an older guy, the other guy's a come-up guy. So how did that factor into how you were putting together your predictive modeling?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, age is super important, a consideration, and resume is super important. So when we were finding comps, especially with MiltonWilliams, I went a little crazy with the comps. I had like 20 maybe comps that I compared him to because I tried to stay within that contract number range, like going into his second contract, and going at 26. And Sweat, I had a little bit less because a lot of them were within this range of 28. But I definitely tried to stay as close to the age and like what time they are in their career to contextualize it.
Mm-hmm. Did Williams, was he hard only because, there's a million D tackles in the league. Now, they're not all free agents, but was he harder because of sort of the way he was used earlier on compared to the last year and a half?
Yeah, I mean, it's made a huge difference. I also think what makes him hard is he's very versatile.
Mm-hmm.
He can play a lot of positions on the D line, and a lot of the guys in the market are kind of one-trick ponies, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
So it just trying to get as much data and information as I could, I thought was important to this analysis, especially because his numbers aren't crazy good even this year. So just kind of seeing where he was successful and what that looked like on the market, I thought was the more information I had, the better.
Right. I had a feeling that would be the case because defensive tackles don't have great raw data all the time. Like, they don't get the sacks like the edge rushers do, but they create pressures and they create hurries. And some of that sometimes can get lost in the raw data, right? Here's what's really interesting about MiltonWilliams. I looked this up. I think he has the same number of sacks and quarterback hits that Javon Hargrave had when Javon Hargrave first became available for free agency. The Eagles signed him from the Steelers. So you're talking about, if you want to, looking for a good comp like that, they both play the same position. Milton's a better run defender, but they both, rush the passer well, but they were both had to work their way up. With the Steelers weren't immediate, but to have the same number of sacks and quarterback hits, I thought was pretty fascinating there. And if you remember, the Eagles reset the market at the time for Javon Hargrave when they signed him to a 3-year, $39 million deal. Sam, that's like $13 million a year. That was the market for D tackles, and that really is what, just 5 years ago? Kind of crazy how much it's changed.
It's changed quite a bit, with the highest at 24.5 right now a year.
Man, good to be a D tackle. All right.
Guess so.
So when you ran all the numbers and you did your research and your predictive modeling, what did it tell you about what you think or what the model tells you about his earning potential?
Yeah. So really anywhere from, 10 million, 10.5 million to probably 17.75 is kind of where the model said.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's more realistic that he would be somewhere in the 11 to $13 million range, to be a little bit more specific.
All right. That model completely shocks me because, and again, this is where maybe the outlier comes in, or the team that just has money to spend and wants a guy. But if the market, top of the market is 24 million, and he is the top 3 technique on the market, I've felt all along he was going to see 20, north of 20, and I know I've spoken to some people around the league who believe he's going to get that too. So how does that, I would ask you, I don't want to say the modeling is missing because you might be absolutely right, but where might the discrepancy be between what the predictive modeling shows and what the opinion of league personnel is?
Sure. I think in order to have this conversation, we should talk about the statistics I chose for this model.
Absolutely.
And I think before we even get into that, I should explain a statistic that we also use for Bond that I just think is really important. It's this measurement called stops. And in the past, we've talked about offensive efficiency and how there was a certain threshold you needed to get on first down, second down, third down, and fourth down in order for a play to be efficient.
Mhm.
Stops is the inverse of that. So it is when you prevent offensive efficiency. So when you have defensive efficiency. So how many times did you single-handedly contribute to a defensively efficient play?
Mhm.
Or, the inverse of that, how were you able to stop the offense, you as an individual? So stops is one of my favorite statistics
Mhm.
that I was able to put in here, and Bond was phenomenal at it. And the issue is Williams is not
Hmm.
phenomenal at it. He had 17 stops in his 21 games played,
Mhm.
which is 0.81 stops per game. So I think that to me, that shows, and I think this was one of the issues that Williams had was his inability to play the run, and it wasn't bad at it. I just
I was
don't
gonna say he's so much better than Hargrave from a tape standpoint because he doesn't get driven back
for
by
sure.
double, but he also doesn't get double teamed that much either. But go ahead.
Yeah, and I think that's where the big discrepancy is in these stops, right? He is able to, get to the quarterback. He's able to create pressure very well. He's very successful at it, but he is unable to stop efficient offense. And I
Mhm.
think that there is value in that. And I think teams look for somebody that is a wrecker and can stop an offense. And I just don't know. And I think that's what the numbers say, that he is that guy.
Mhm.
So I think that's the discrepancy.
Interesting. Um, I wonder, I don't want to call it a flaw in the modeling. I mean, everything has, but like if you drive back your guard, right? If you're a 3 technique and and the running back moves out of and somebody else makes the tackle, you don't get credit for the
Correct.
stop, right? Right.
Correct.
So
Which
there's
is the same issue
yeah.
with defensive linemen. I know we talked about offensive linemen issues and capturing statistics. Some of those issues are also present with defensive linemen for the reason you just stated.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's a really important consideration that could limit this model. And I'm not saying this model knows everything. I wish it did. It would make our jobs very easy.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, look, if you look at everyone that I pulled for comps, the
Mhm.
only one that gets close is the 2024 Raekwon Davis deal. He had 0.94 stops. Everybody else was 1 or more stops a game.
Mhm.
Just for context, I think it's important. But again, you're right. Just because you recorded the stop doesn't mean you didn't contribute to the stop. And I think that's an important thing to, realize while we're looking at this and to contextualize this analysis.
Listen, I'm first of all, I think you're probably it's hard to say because again, we don't wanna exclude the fact that 1 or 2 teams and a competitive war will drive things up. But to your model's point, Sam, right? If you look at the guys making 21 or more million on an AAV basis, Chris Jones, Christian Wilkins, Matabuke from Baltimore, Ali McNeil, Quinnen Williams, Derek Brown, Jeffrey Simmons, DeForest Buckner. These are Pro Bowl players. These are guys who've been starting for years. Dexter Lawrence, 22 and a half, Deron Payne, Leonard Williams, Kenny Clark, Christian Barmore, obviously he was injured with the Patriots last year with the blood clots, but had a really nice career before that. Javon Hargrave, Jonathan Allen. So look at the names I'm going. Vita Vea. I'm down to like 17.7. Draymond Jones, 17.1. So as much as we love Milton Williams, right, and as much as our eyes have seen the impact he had on games, no one's putting him in that conversation yet, right? Just that either hasn't had enough opportunity or the numbers to show, or the Pro Bowls or the All Pros. So it's a league full of really proven, established D tackles. So when people have told me, look, he's looking at north of 20 million, I believe that because I think that people are watching his tape and trying to see a pathway, whether it's true or not, of a player playing just like those guys. But when you consider what he really has done and produced over his career here, 4 years, he definitely falls more into that category of the guys who are less than 16 million range. Zach Allen, 15.2, Cameron Hayward. Well, Cameron Hayward's on the back end of a contract here, but the David Onyemadas, the Malik Collinses, the DJ Readers, guys who are really good players, but never reset the market because they weren't seen that way. So that makes this almost what's the word, inflection point or a crossroads for how the league will view Milton Williams. Are they going to view him as one of those 15 names I've mentioned of guys who have all these Pro Bowls and established guys, or are they going to view him as a nice complementary piece who's a little bit below that and more in that range that you were mentioning?
And like you said, it only takes one team to decide that he's worth that, right? If 30 teams, even 31 teams, let's say, think of him as a complimentary piece, but one team sees him as the superstar, that could reset the market. It won't. Let's be clear. He's not going to reset the market, but he could be, that north of $20 million. Like, it just takes one team that sees him that way and to pay him that way. And then that's a new comp to add to this chart.
So that's a good point. And the one thing that the modeling I don't think can always take into account is, well, what's his competition out there on the market, right? Because you're plugging in data and things like that. I think to his advantage, it's not a strong defensive tackle free agent class. Draft, yes, but you can never really, that's not really how you should operate your football team because you don't know you're going to get the guy, right? So, but other than that, if you look at like defensive tackles on the free agent market, really not abundant. He might be, among the top 3 or 4, if not number 1. I haven't really looked at every single name. I know Hargrave is a free agent again as well, and he's clearly younger, Milton Williams. So that might help inflate the number. So if your model says 11 to 13, maybe it gets to 15 to 18, who knows? But let's kind of apply it to the Eagles. If it's anywhere between 11 and 13, I almost think the arrow would point back to the Eagles on that because they don't have a whole lot of high-priced guys on the line. Yes, Jalen Carter next year will be, but they're pretty young at the edges, right, with Smith and with Jalix Hunt. We'll see what happens with Huff. I have a feeling he won't be on the team. They'll have to eat some money there, but you could probably afford it if it's manageable that way.
I could see it being a possibility. I mean, especially with the recent Darius Slay cut, which opens cash. It doesn't necessarily open so much cap, but you can be a little bit flexible when you have the cash.
And that's really how the Eagles operate on a cash basis. That I think if the number for Milton Williams is in the range that you see, there's a better chance that he becomes an Eagle. If the number gets to north of 18, north of 20, I think you say, Milton, you are awesome. Have fun being a New England Patriot and, or a Tennessee Titan. No, I wouldn't be a Titan, I don't think. I'm trying to think of a good fit. A team that has a lot of money, but not a lot of D-line. Maybe you could put him next to Jeffrey Simmons. I don't know. I'm just
kind of crazy D-line.
Yeah, that would be pretty darn good, right? Well, I mean, is that any different than Jalen Carter and Milton Williams, right? Not much.
I don't know. I think Jalen Carter might be one of the better players, at least for the future too. No disrespect to Jeffrey Simmons, who I think has been one of the best, if not the best, defensive tackle for the past couple of years.
Yeah. At this time next year, I may just save you and be like, do not do a predictive model on Jalen Carter because he's going to be the highest paid defensive tackle in football. As long as, he has anything near the year that he just had, we can save it. We could all you have to do is just figure out what that number is going to be. You don't have to plug in too much. You just look at the top few guys, add a few more million and say that's Jalen Carter's number, right?
100% agree.
All right.
Something you said I kind of want to touch on, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
I want to kind of look at the free agents that he's going up against, because I think it's super fascinating, and I really want to talk it through real quick. He's only top 5 in pressures and pressures per game, which is, to be fair, like the two most important. I guess it's really one stat, but it's really the most important stat you're looking at.
Right.
But he's 14th in missed tackle percentage.
Huh.
He's 19th in stops, and he's 17th in stops per game.
And how would that compare? Are you comparing them against all DTs, right?
All free agent defensive tackles.
Do you have some of the other free agent defensive tackle? I know Javon Hargrave again is one.
Yeah, I have it right here. So basically, Calais Campbell, BJ Hill, Adam Butler, DJ Jones, Kinlaw, Reed, Puna Ford,
right?
Bunch of guys.
Those are all like kind of rotational guys. For most of those guys,
most of those guys, yes.
Yeah.
Let me see the ones, but I can organize by pressure.
I think what you're saying as you look is that, if anything, that's just a good negotiating tool for an NFL team to be like, well, maybe not 20 to 24 million, maybe, because you still need to put him next to a 1A. Like he's the guy that you want to have the one-on-ones while your other guy is taking on the double teams. I would
100%.
Yeah.
I agree with you completely. I just think that perspective is important in understanding why I don't think, and why the model doesn't think he'll get those numbers.
Right.
Because I think that kind of matters. But again, like we said, one team that views him that way, and see ya.
One team and not much competition on the free agent market for somebody who's going to be a game changer in pressures, which is the most important thing for a free technique. Absolutely. Good stuff on that, man. I was really like, my eyes kind of fell out of my head when I saw that 13 million. Like, are we serious here? But making some good points, and we'll see. And I think Eagles fans would be happy about that, because it might make it easier for the Eagles to then re-sign him if that were the case. All right, let's move on to JoshSweat. And listen, I really don't. We'll get into what the number says. It's just hard to see him coming back anyway. I mean, he agreed to a pay cut. Wound up saying, Eagles, I was better than you thought. Had a great year. I have a feeling he's going to make a lot of money on the free agent market. And with the Eagles really moving on to their young, dynamic tandem of Felix Hunt and Nolan Smith, I have a hard time seeing any number that is realistic for him working for the Eagles at this point. What did your model tell you?
Yeah, I mean, out of the big 4 that we've done so far, this is the most likely I feel confident is gone. Like you said. So the floor is 17 million, and I think he'll still get way north of that. And then the ceiling, I think, is the 21 million, which was the Trey Hendrickson contract. So I really think a realistic look at him would probably be anywhere to 19 to 20.5 million, and is pretty comfortable. I think his stats, if you look at the market comps, are significantly better than the 2023 Alex Highsmith contract, and are worse than the 2023 Trey Hendrickson contract. And you can have some inflation there, which is why I feel like you might get a little bit more. But I think he's squarely between those two contract precedents.
Yeah. And the guys who are in that range of 20 to 21, 22, you mentioned Trey Hendrickson. Let's be fair. Trey Hendrickson he's underpaid. I mean, he's a beast, and he's at 21 million, but Bradley Chubb, Joey Bosa, Von Miller, Jonathan Grenard. I mean, these are all players that Sweat pretty much performs at an equal or better level than. I mean, Harold Landry was at 17.5. You mentioned Highsmith at 17. So it is really, really hard to see Sweat commanding less than 17. I mean, when you get to 15 million, you're talking about Nwosu, Armstead's at 14.5. I mean, he's just better. I mean, it's the stats. Now he's got the knee, right? That he's already proven has not been problematic, but NFL teams are going to use that and know about that. And he does have just a little bit of a down year from 2 years ago. But I mean, his length, his explosion, his resume, this could be where he does fall into that 20, or this could be also where the team's like, we need to have JoshSweat, and we'll put all the money in one, or it may be a short-term deal, but that might enable a team to pay a little bit more than on the AAV for that.
Yeah, and I think this is a guy that very well could get more than even what the model says.
Mhm.
Uh, Honestly, just based on his playoff performance too, he was utterly dominant in the playoffs, which thank you, Josh Sweat.
Well, it's sort of like, "Thank you for putting a left guard in front of me instead of a left tackle." Thank you for the
Absolutely, it
opportunity.
doesn't hurt. But, I mean, if you look at the free agent class of edge rushers, he's 1st in sacks and sacks per game. He's 2nd in QB hurries. He's 2nd in total pressures per game, and he's 2nd in win rate, and 6th in QB hits.
Mm.
So, I mean, he very well could be, if not the best option, one of the best options, for edge. So that alone leads me to think that he easily could get more and probably is gone.
Yeah, and the nature of the position being an edge rusher, right? It feels like there will probably be multiple teams that are gonna be interested, and so when you get a bidding war, you always get that one team that's like, "All right, we know we gotta outbid the rest."
Absolutely, and I think that's what we'll see, come March 12th, so
And how does the market, because I don't have it in front of me, maybe you do, the other edge rushers that are going to be free agents, do you have that in front of you?
yeah, hold on one sec. Edge free agents?
I
Uh,
think, again, that's also not a very strong class, so that could wind up helping him. I mean, Hassan Reddick's out there, but I really honestly, man, you wanna talk about a model having a difficult time taking into account non-data context, like, he's held out, he's made life difficult for 2 teams in the last 2 years, he's aging now. Who knows what Hassan Reddick will command on the I wouldn't even be able to figure out.
Good thing I didn't have to figure that one out.
Yeah.
But if you look at the other class, Dante Fowler, Khalil Mack, Chase Young, Chauncey Golston, Judon is
Mhm.
there as well.
Guys who just have not been as consistent as Josh Sweat. I mean,
Yeah,
you can talk about some spurts for guys like Judon had some good years. I think he's been a double-digit sack guy before, either with New England, or Baltimore, but, who are the other guys you said? I'm sorry.
no, you're good.
Vince
Dante
Young,
Fowler,
yeah,
Khalil
Fowler.
Mack, Chase Young, Azeez Ojulari, Emmanuel Agba,
Hmm,
um, Derek Barnett. That's an interesting name.
it is. I think Ojulari is an interesting name. He struggles to stay healthy, but he has some good explosion, some really long arms. But he's, I think, a situational pass rusher who may get overpaid for being that, not a 3 down out there, defends the run as well as Josh Sweat, rushes the passer as well as Josh Sweat.
Well,
Yeah, you're
the Eagles have never overpaid for a situational pass rusher.
no, no, not at all. No, no, not at all.
Yeah. I don't
So,
know if we win the
yeah,
Super Bowl without him, like, who knows, like, how it actually works, but, uh, hey, we'll take it. Thank you for, being there, Bryce Huff.
well, Tim, thank you for the hard work you put in. That's really interesting. I think in general, you come out of this, at least the 4 guys we've done so far in this series, and you think, man, if this model's right and they can get 2 out of those 4, and then Becton, we'll see, right? Because the money we talked about seemed to be on the lower end, but
Sure.
I don't even know if the Eagles want to pay even middle to lower end for Becton. We'll see. That would be pretty good for helping them in their attempt to become back-to-back champions. So luckily for us, we've got you back to back to back. We've got you for a while, and you're going to continue to do great analytics work for us. So the next few guys we'll get to at some point will be not as big on the recognizable name list, but we want to talk about guys like Isaiah Rodgers and Oren Burks because they could play prominent roles for the Eagles going forward, depending on what the Eagles do at that position. So at some point we'll get into them as well, and then some of the guys who are up for contract extensions we'll get into, along with some other NFL free agents. So it has been great having you, and look forward to having you back soon.
Excited to be here.
All right, great stuff. That is the great Sam Finkel. I'm Geoff Mosher. You've been watching special edition of Inside the Birds. Catch you all on the next one.